Welcome in. It is day 101, and you're speaking with the Meeples Champion. And today, on October 19th, we are bringing out one of my rarest games in my collection. This is a game that I wish I could play more often, but it really requires, in order to play it at least fun, 6 people. And for me, I really like to push it and try to get to 8 if I can. That game is called Shadow Hunters. Now, Shadow Hunters is an interesting game because essentially you're playing with 3 different types of teams. You've got the Shadow players, you've got the Hunter players, and you've got the Neutral players. Everybody's identity is kept completely secret. And the idea is that depending on player count, you'll decide based on what the book says how many people are going to be for each type. So if you're playing your least, which is 4, it's 2 Hunters and 2 Shadow. But if you get all the way up to 8 players, it's 3 Hunters, 3 Shadow, 2 Neutral. Now, every single character that you can be in the game is completely decided at random. So you'll basically say, okay, we're going to shuffle all our Hunters. Here's the Hunters. Here's our Shadows. Here's our Neutrals. Now shuffle those, pass them out. And every person has different win conditions, as well as special abilities that you can't use it until you reveal who you are, which can expose you and make it a lot harder to win. So you'll roll your dice and you'll get to go to a different section of the board. And each section of the board has 2 options. You'll pick one of these options. Now this will either allow you to, usually, one of them will say you have to draw from the white deck. One of them will say you have to draw from the black deck. Another one will say you have to draw from the green deck. Another one will say it's up to you. You can choose any of the decks. Another one will allow you to either give 2 points of damage or heal a point of damage to another player. And another one will allow you to go and steal equipment that's on somebody and put it on you instead. So there's a lot of movement in this. There is a way for only one person to win. There's a way for nobody to win. There's a way for multiple people to win. You might find that it's, your win condition says, well, when this happens, all the Shadows win. And you end up doing it and you're a Shadow and you reveal. And now the other 2 Shadows who thought they were going to lose get to be part of the win. Or you might find that it's, yours says you have to kill this particular player or do something on a certain turn and you do it. But that at the same time, somebody else reveals, well, I was waiting for this to happen at this time and that happened, so I also win. And all of a sudden, a Shadow and a Hunter both win at the same time and they get to share the win. There's a lot of ways to play this game as far as figuring out how to strategize, figuring out how to play each other. And it is such a fun experience. I played it with my family and it was an okay game, but then I played it with my friends and we had a blast with it. It's one of the coolest games I ever added to my collection, and I'm so happy because it's so hard to find now. Why don't we jump into our 7 categories and talk about this spooky themed Shadow Hunters game and what exactly it does for each of these categories. When it comes to the art, for me, I love this box. I know we get some light here, so it's a little bit tough to tell sometimes, but this is a really nice box. And it's what sold me on it. I bought this in a store on the spot because I thought it just looked cool. And it sat on my shelf for many years. I couldn't get player count high enough to play it. And then when I finally did, it was with family and I enjoyed the game, but they weren't really into it. So it was one of those where I finally got to experience the game, but I wasn't sure. And then I finally got to play with friends, and that's where I really found out I loved the game. But the art's what sold me. And the art on the inside of the board, I think, sells it just as well. It's dark. It's very anime-like when it comes to the cards. So I find that really cool, the way the characters are drawn in and how it's very dark on some cards, very light on other cards. It's I think, a serious type art. I don't find it to be goofy, but it's very anime-like where, if you look at the serious type animes that are out there, it's drawn in that respect. And I really like that about this game. I think they do a great job with its art. It feels unique to me. It's a thumbs up. The components are, you've got your board, you've got your cards, and you've got your dice. And that's really all that this game is about. And I think that they put enough effort into all of these that I'm not worried about anything breaking, anything tearing, anything wearing. They did a good job. It's a thumbs up. The price is, it doesn't really matter how much this may or may not cost because it's impossible to get. You will never see this in a Barnes & Noble or a Target. You're almost never going to see this in a regular store. If you do, it's the rare occasion you run into it, and you won't find it online. I want to say that if this was when it first came out, this game was probably going for in that $50, maybe $60 range, but probably closer to $50. But with the way it is today, I don't think you'd be lucky enough to find this and get it cheaper than $100 because it's rare, so people are going to sell it at a higher price. I know I don't want to give it away, and if I ever were to, I probably would look up the prices and find out what it's worth and say, wow, it's worth a lot of money. I'm not just going to hand this off to somebody for its original value, and especially because I love the game, so I don't want to give it away. So overall, price has to be about availability. It's got to be a thumbs down. So the difficulty is that this game is definitely not for kids. There's a lot going on in this game, and it's really hard to follow for a kid. I think a beginner can play, but you have to understand that shift in difficulty. A beginner can play paying attention to who they are and just trying to figure out what they need to do. Whereas I think an experienced player is going to be able to start figuring out what can other people do and trying to pay attention and zone in on what the other players, either who are they, what are they trying to achieve. And I think an expert player, if they're into these multiplayer hidden role games, will really love this. And if that's not for them, then this might not hit. But I think that expert players, this is the type of game that even if you aren't into that stuff, this might grab you because there's so much going on. So I think that the difficulty is perfect with this. It's a thumbs up. The replayability is that this game is hard to get to the table because as much as I love it, I really feel this game is optimal playing at the biggest player count you can get. So 8 and 7 are what I'm aiming for, and I'll settle for 6, but lower than that, I don't want to pull it out because I don't want to waste my time. It allows you to play at 4 and at 5. I just don't think those player counts are good enough. So that limits the ability for you to even get it to the table. And then the game, it does go reasonably fast. It's not like this game takes 2 hours. It doesn't even take usually an hour. Usually a player can hit their winning condition in about 30 to 45 minutes. So you could play this 2 or 3 times in a row. That's the good part. Get it with a game group and pull it out for the night and say, we're going to play this one a few times. And I think you can get replayability there. But for me, I think that this game's hard to really get people to agree to want to play unless you're aiming for October. I think this game, because of its darkness, because of the theme, because you're dealing with hunters trying to catch the shadow, and you have the neutrals basically being the villagers stuck in between it all. I think that's such a fun, classic feel of, imagine that those shadow are vampires, I mean, that's to me kind of what it feels like. It's almost like you're playing a vampire game, being dealt with them being hunted and trying to, go through the villages. Maybe you could, there's so many different things you could kind of fill into that role of the shadow. But it feels like watching those old movies, playing those old games, and that they just found a cool way to mix it in. In many ways, it's almost like somebody saw the game Werewolf and said, okay, we're going to do Werewolf. We're just going to make it an actual board game and make it a lot more complicated, but in a great way. So for me, I think the replayability is there, especially in October, but definitely multiple times in the same night. Thumbs up. Your keys to victory, and this is where I think this game really, really takes the cake. Every character has their own unique keys to victory. And that's where you could be playing an 8-player game, and all of a sudden, you're 25 minutes in, and 3 people can win on totally different reasons on the same moment in the game. And I think that's awesome to allow you to do that. There's also ways to snake the victory, where it might say, like, you want this person, when this person wins on this turn, you're going to win instead. And all of a sudden, somebody does everything right, and they think they've won, and then they go, well, you would have won if you'd done it on turn 8, or you did it on turn 10, but you did it on turn 9, My player said, if you did this on turn 9, I get the victory instead. And all of a sudden, somebody gets the victory snatched from them. Such a fun setup. Great keys to victory. Thumbs up. Unique. This is a tough one to talk about when it comes to that unique area. Do I think the game overall is unique? I do. I feel like there's nothing quite like this. At the same time, I did mention that base game of Werewolf. It feels like this game kind of took Werewolf and pushed it to another level. And that's where you have to discuss in your head, where does unique fall for you? For me, every game today, with the once in a while exception, has a starting point of something that inspired it. You know, a mechanic from another game, a theme. You know, you see something that's simple and you want to make it more complex. But that doesn't mean that the game that you then create has to be considered not unique because it started from something else. It's up to where that game lands and how that game compares. I would never say to somebody, oh, let's play Shadowhunters. And they go, let's play Werewolf. And I go, oh, okay, that's the same game. I'll play Werewolf. Because it's not the same game. This is a totally different game than Werewolf. Yes, I can see the similarities, and I can see where that game probably inspired this, but I can't think of another game comparable to this game. If I can play this game at 8 players, there is no comparable game that I will say, yeah, I feel like that would be a good play instead. This stands alone. It's got to be a thumbs up on unique. Overall, what do I think? I think that if you ever get the chance to get this game, buy it on the spot. Yes, it's not going to hit for everybody. The theme, I think, is fine, especially in October. And I think that the game looks cool. But it might be a little complicated for some people. And maybe if you're talking about a family and you have kids, this may not be one you want to grab because it just might be too complicated for them. But so long as it's not massively overpriced, if you come across this game in a store, pick it up. If you see this game online and somebody's selling it, or you go to a thrift store, or you go to a yard sale and you see it, just grab the game. Because it's going to be fun, and worst case scenario, you can just sell it for probably a good profit because it is a rare game. But that's just my opinion. It's up to you guys to get out there. Be the shadow, be the hunters, or be the neutral, regular peasant people in between. Enjoy the game if you can, and see what you think. Well, it has been day 101, and we've been speaking about Shadowhunters, and you've been speaking to the Meeples Champion. Like, share, subscribe, and check down below in the description. If somehow I can find a game of this on Amazon, I will put the link up for you. But be warned, if it's there, it's probably expensive. Well, until next time, I'll talk to you tomorrow.